Star Wars has spent the last 5 years explaining, somehow, Palpatine returned. Are you convinced? Star Wars' decision to bring Emperor Palpatine/Darth Sidious back from the dead in Star Wars. The Rise of Skywalker proved to be very controversial, especially because it was barely explained. The Star Wars sequel trilogy is still one of the most highly criticized of Star Wars movies and TV shows, and The Rise of Skywalker in particular is largely considered one of Star Wars' worst movies. In part, this is because the Palpatine plot twist felt like a last-ditch effort to tie together the movies after they changed hands multiple times. One of the problems with the Star Wars sequels was the feeling of a tug-of-war this changing of hands caused, and it seems the franchise decided that the answer to such a confusing narrative arc was simply to bring back the most prominent version in all of Star Wars, Emperor Palpatine. Unfortunately, The Rise of Skywalker did not manage to do this in a convincing way whatsoever, and it led to extreme backlash. In the years since, Star Wars has tried to make Palpatine's return more believable, but how successful have those efforts really been? The Rise of Skywalker minimally explained Palpatine's resurrection. Star Wars' only explanation was, somehow, Palpatine returned. Although it was undoubtedly clear to the creative minds behind The Rise of Skywalker that bringing back Palpatine would be a hard sell, the movie did very little to provide an explanation for his miraculous resurrection. It was clear that he had a very corpse-like appearance and was hooked up to a life-sustaining device, but beyond that, it wasn't clear how he'd survived. In the movie itself, the only real explanation was Poe's now infamous line, "Somehow, Palpatine returned." In the movie itself, the only real explanation was Poe's now infamous line, "Somehow, Palpatine returned." Admittedly, this felt like a bit of a slap in the face for viewers. The phrasing of that line alone suggested Star Wars knew this plotline didn't really make sense, and the movie didn't seem all that concerned with whether audiences believed it or not. Although The Rise of Skywalker avoided any real explanation, Star Wars TV shows have taken strides to explain this controversial choice in recent years. The Mandalorian introduced Project Necromancer. Palpatine's resurrection plans were introduced on-screen in The Mandalorian. The Star Wars fan-favorite show The Mandalorian was the first to truly provide further explanation for this resurrection. The Mandalorian Season 3's retcon of Palpatine's return especially offered audiences at least some explanation by name-dropping Project Necromancer. In The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 7, the Imperial Shadow Council, which included Moff Gideon, was introduced. Brendol Hux, father of the sequel trilogy's Armitage Hux, was also a member of this council, and it was he who was working on Project Necromancer. Although the exact details still were not clear, it was confirmed that this project was linked to Dr. Pershing's cloning efforts, already hinting at a connection to Palpatine's return. What truly drove home this connection, though, was the additional information provided in Star Wars, The Bad Batch. The Bad Batch revealed so much more about Project Necromancer. The Bad Batch Season 3 was dedicated to this storyline. The Bad Batch in general provided additional insights into Palpatine's reign and his plans to safeguard his future, even in the event of his death. However, The Bad Batch Season 3 was especially focused on explaining Palpatine's cloning plans. Before this season, the Empire kidnapped Nala Se, the Kaminoan scientist who played a major role in the clones created for the Republic before and throughout the Clone Wars era. Omega, the unaltered female clone of Jango Fett, was also taken by the Empire just before this season. In Season 3, Omega's time held captive by the Empire revealed that there were efforts underway to make Force-sensitive clones. To achieve this goal, the Empire was testing on both clone troopers and Force-sensitive children they had abducted. The Empire was testing on both clone troopers and Force-sensitive children they had abducted. It seemed that the Bad Batch was therefore perfectly primed to finally explain Palpatine's return and make this glaring plot hole from the Rise of Skywalker at least a little better. Bewilderingly, the Bad Batch Season 3 ending instead undid nearly all of that work. In the show's final episode, the cloning facility on Mount Tantus was blown up, presumably blowing up most, if not all, the research in progress in the facility along with it. This opened the door to once again ask, how exactly did Palpatine return in the Rise of Skywalker?